On October 2, 1552, on a bluff overlooking the Volga River, a city was engulfed in flames. Kazan, the capital of the last remaining kingdom descended from the once powerful Mongol Empire, was succumbing to fire. Within its protective walls, 10,000 Tatar cavalry battled tenaciously until their demise. Outside, 150,000 Russian soldiers inundated the city through breaches, which had been blasted open by weaponry the world had never witnessed before. Witnessing this unfolding drama was 22-year-old Ivan IV, who would forever be known in historical accounts as the Terrible. Yet, this narrative transcends a mere battle. It recounts how a nascent nation ultimately liberated itself from the shadow of the Mongol Empire after 300 years, embarking on its journey to become the largest country on Earth. The pivotal question remains: how did a young Tsar succeed in defeating a power that had subjugated Russia for 3 centuries? And how did this singular decision fundamentally alter the course of history? Share your location and current time in the comment section below. Now let's journey back to 1552. To grasp the profound significance of the Battle of Kazan, we must rewind to the 13th century. In 1237, when Batu Khan's Mongol cavalry swept across the steppes like a tempest, they didn't merely conquer Russia, they obliterated it. The principalities of Rus were reduced to ashes. Kiev, the epicenter of Slavic civilization, was razed. For the subsequent 240 years, Russian princes humbly submitted to the Khans of the Golden Horde. This was not simply a military occupation, it was absolute domination, economic, political, and psychological. Annually, Russian princes were compelled to deliver tribute to Sarai, the capital of the Golden Horde. They required permission to govern their own territories. And whenever the Khan desired, Mongol horsemen would materialize, conducting raids, pillaging, and enslaving the populace. However, by the 15th century, the Golden Horde began to disintegrate. Succession conflicts and diminishing power led to the emergence of 3 new Khans from the empire's remnants: Crimea, Astrakhan, and Kazan. Among these 3, Kazan posed the most significant threat to Moscow. The reason? Its strategic location. Kazan was situated directly on the Volga River, a vital artery for trade and military operations. From their stronghold atop a high hill, they exercised control over all movement between Moscow and the east. More critically, Kazan preserved Mongol military customs. Tatar cavalry remained the most formidable warriors of the steppes. From its establishment in 1438 to 1552, Russian forces made at least 10 attempts to conquer Kazan. Each one, a staggering 10 times, ended in failure. These assaults typically followed a pattern. Russian troops would arrive, besiege the city, bombard it for several weeks, then retreat due to logistical challenges or because Tatar cavalry disrupted their supply lines. Kazan appeared impregnable. But in 1547, a 17-year-old resolved to change this reality. His given name was Ivan Vasilyevich, but history would immortalize him as Ivan the Terrible. Ivan IV was not cut from the same cloth as other princes. He ascended to the position of Grand Prince at the tender age of 3, following his father's untimely demise. The events that followed profoundly shaped the man Ivan would become. Instead of being protected and educated, young Ivan witnessed the noble families, the boyars, vying for power around the throne. They neglected him and even subjected him to abuse, all while luxuriating on state resources. Ivan's upbringing was marked by fear and isolation, yet it also instilled in him an unyielding resolve. He vowed that such a scenario would never plague Russia again. He would forge a strong Russia. He would eliminate dependence on any external forces. And the greatest impediment to this vision was Kazan. In 1547, at merely 16 years old, Ivan executed an unprecedented act. He declared himself Tsar, derived from Caesar, Emperor of all Russia, no longer merely a Grand Prince. This was a bold assertion of absolute authority. Ivan immediately focused his attention on Kazan. However, Ivan recognized that the old tactics would prove ineffective. Russian forces had failed 10 times. He required an entirely novel approach. Ivan's campaigns in 1547 and again in 1549 to 1550 both faltered. Yet, unlike his predecessors, Ivan did not concede defeat. Instead, he learned. He comprehended that the problem was not the bravery of his soldiers. The issue lay in logistics and technology. To conquer Kazan, Ivan needed 3 crucial elements: an advance base near the objective, sophisticated siege weaponry, and a professionally trained army. This marked the moment Ivan commenced preparations for the battle that would alter history. In 1551, a peculiar event transpired on the Volga River. From the city of Uglik, thousands of numbered logs drifted downstream. These were not ordinary logs, they were components of a modular fortress. Military engineer Ivan Viridov had meticulously designed a complete wooden stronghold, dismantled it, assigned a number to every piece, and transported it 900 kilometers downriver. Upon reaching its destination, a mere 18 meters from Kazan, Russian troops reassembled it within weeks. They christened it Sviyazhsk. This was more than just an engineering marvel. It was a stroke of strategic brilliance. For the first time, Russia possessed a secure base near Kazan, a facility to store provisions and weapons, and to serve as a launching point for assaults. The anxieties about lengthy supply lines were eliminated. Yet, Ivan's strategic foresight didn't cease there. He recognized the limitations of conventional Russian forces, feudal cavalry where each nobleman furnished his troops, finding them insufficient due to their lack of regimentation and synchronized training. Consequently, Ivan inaugurated a novel military contingent, the Streltsy. This marked Russia's inaugural professional standing army of musketeers, remunerated, rigorously drilled, and critically, pledging allegiance to the Tsar rather than individual aristocrats. They wielded arquebuses, the most advanced firearms of that epoch. Beyond infantry, artillery played a pivotal role. Ivan recruited European specialists, particularly from Italy and Germany, who possessed expertise in contemporary siege warfare. He amassed an impressive array of 150 cannons, a formidable artillery contingent by the standards of the era. However, the true game-changer was an individual named Butler, likely an English engineer, whom the Russians dubbed Rozmis, signifying quote, _1__. He was a master of a nascent technology, excavating tunnels and employing gunpowder to demolish fortifications. By June 1552, all preparations were complete. Ivan had assimilated lessons from previous setbacks. Now, he commanded not merely a larger force, but a qualitatively superior army, boasting enhanced technology and a refined strategy. On June 16, 1552, a 22-year-old Ivan IV spearheaded an army of 150,000 toward Kazan. This represented their 11th attempt, but this time was destined to be different. When Russian forces materialized before Kazan's ramparts on August 22, 1552, the Tatar defenders exhibited no apprehension. They had repelled Russian assaults 10 times previously. What made this instance any different? Kazan, perched atop a lofty hill, was fortified by sturdy wooden walls and a deep moat. Within its confines were months of provisions, a covert subterranean water source, and 10,000 Tatar warriors, renowned as the world's finest cavalry. Khan Yadigar Muhammad even dispatched a message to Ivan, declaring, "Everything is prepared for you here. We invite you to the feast." Yet, what transpired next took them by surprise. Instead of a direct assault, Russian troops began excavating trenches, progressively zigzagging their way towards the city. This tactic, known as approaches, had been refined in Europe but was unprecedented on the Russian steppes. Concurrently, Ivan Viridov was constructing a device unknown in Russia, a battery tower. This was no conventional wooden siege engine. It was a 12-meter-tall, multi-tiered engineering marvel specifically engineered to deploy artillery. Its uppermost platform could accommodate 10 heavy cannons, while its lower levels housed 50 lighter guns. The concept revolved around concentrated firepower, 60 cannons repeatedly bombarding a single section of the wall. This invention served as the precursor to modern artillery emplacements and was truly revolutionary. Nonetheless, a challenge emerged. Kazan also possessed cannons. Should they demolish the tower during its construction, the entire endeavor would be jeopardized. Consequently, construction proceeded under the cloak of night, shielded by temporary barriers. Meanwhile, Russian artillery had a singular objective: neutralize Kazan's guns. By August 29th, following a week of relentless bombardment, they achieved their aim. Kazan's heavy cannons fell silent. The tower could now be maneuvered into position. However, just as things appeared promising, natural elements intervened. Fierce storms erupted, transforming the Russian encampment into a mire of mud. Tents were torn away, and morale plummeted. Some Russian soldiers attributed this to black magic, believing Tatar sorcerers were conjuring adverse weather. Even historical narratives recount Kazan's magicians appearing on the walls each dawn, enacting peculiar rites. Ivan countered by introducing a crucifix, purportedly containing a fragment of the true cross from Jerusalem. Priests blessed the camp, and whether by chance or divine intervention, the weather cleared. Concurrently, beneath the surface, another conflict was unfolding. Mining teams were surreptitiously digging tunnels towards the walls. Their initial objective was Kazan's underground water supply. The city possessed a hidden subterranean water system, enabling it to withstand prolonged sieges. But Rasmus, the English engineer, discovered it. On August 30th, an explosion reverberated, obliterating the water supply. Henceforth, every drop of water in Kazan had to be meticulously rationed. The battery tower was propelled into position, and from its 12-meter elevation, 60 cannons relentlessly pounded the same stretch of wall. Inside the city, conditions grew dire. No water, dwindling food, and the walls progressively crumbling each day. Khan Yadigar stubbornly refused to yield. When Ivan even sent Tatar captives back with peace proposals, the defenders on the walls executed their own countrymen, preferring their swift demise to a protracted torment. Yet, Ivan had not yet deployed his ultimate weapon. Underground, mining teams had excavated intricate tunnels directly beneath the principal walls. At strategic junctures, they fashioned expansive chambers, filling them with tons of gunpowder. By September 30th, everything was prepared. A series of fuses were interconnected, forming an elaborate network. The intent was to trigger a series of cascading explosions, one after another, designed to shatter the foundations of the walls at multiple points. On the morning of October 2nd, 1552, the command was issued. The initial explosion thundered, and an entire section of the wall near the Ark Gate was propelled skyward. Another detonation occurred near the Noy Gate, followed by yet another. Once the dust settled, Kazan's fortifications bore 3 immense breaches, through which 150,000 Russian troops commenced their assault. What unfolded next was among the fiercest urban conflicts of the 16th century. Russian forces surged through the gaps like a torrent, yet Kazan's defenders bravely resisted, engaging in combat across every street, within every dwelling, and down every alleyway. This represented the final, desperate stand of a civilization facing its demise. Tatar cavalry, formidable warriors on the vast steppes, found themselves confined to narrow city thoroughfares, unable to leverage their speed and agility, yet they continued to fight. Civilians, including men, women, and even children, seized whatever was at hand and joined the fray. They hurled rocks from rooftops and poured scalding oil from windows, understanding that the city's fall meant the end of their way of life. Their fears proved accurate. The Streltsy, professional musketeers under Ivan's command, advanced with deadly precision through each district, picking off defenders from a range where traditional Tatar close-quarters combat skills offered little advantage. Inside Kazan's primary mosque, Kol Sharif, a prominent religious figure, and his disciples made a last stand. They transformed the madrasa, the Islamic educational institution, into a makeshift stronghold, fighting until the last man fell. Kol Sharif perished defending his precious library. By the afternoon of October 2nd, Khan Yadigar Muhammad had been captured, with the leading Nogai generals surrendering shortly thereafter. A few survivors attempted to escape into the northern forests, only to be pursued and cut down. Others withdrew into the inner citadel, but salvation was not to be found. By sundown, Kazan had completely fallen. The aftermath was exceptionally brutal, even by 16th-century standards. A large-scale massacre ensued, with most Tatar structures demolished and mosques set ablaze. Nevertheless, there were moments of compassion. Between 60,000 and 100,000 Russian captives and enslaved individuals, seized during raids over many years, gained their freedom. A significant number had been held for decades, some having forgotten how to speak Russian. Ivan himself was not present in the street fighting. Historical accounts indicate that he remained in his tent, engaging in prayer throughout the confrontation. Some historians interpret this as a display of wisdom, suggesting a czar should not imperil his life in unpredictable combat, while others speculate Ivan was apprehensive. However, Ivan's whereabouts were less significant than his ultimate achievement. After a 42-day siege, following 114 years of existence and centuries as a hub of Mongol-Tatar power on the Volga River, Kazan had fallen. On October 4th, Ivan entered the conquered metropolis. He commanded the construction of an Orthodox church on the ashes of the main mosque and decreed a new emblem for Russian churches, a cross superimposed on an Islamic crescent. The message was unmistakable. The final Mongol Empire had been defeated. Yet the narrative did not conclude there. In fact, it was merely the beginning. The conquest of Kazan was more than just a military triumph. It represented a pivotal moment in global history, one of those instances where one can declare that the world was irrevocably altered, both before and after the event. Allow me to elaborate. The victory at Kazan demonstrated a crucial truth. European military advancements, cannons, siege tactics, and professional armies outperformed traditional steppe warfare. For centuries, Mongol-Tatar cavalry had dominated battlefields with their swiftness, mobility, and mounted archery prowess. However, when faced with fortified walls, artillery, and firearms, that advantage evaporated. This is why, following Kazan, the other khanates quickly succumbed. Astrakhan was conquered in 1556, and a few decades later, Sibir, the last khanate, also collapsed. The era of steppe empires had concluded. With Kazan and subsequently Astrakhan under Russian dominion, the entirety of the Volga River, from its source to its mouth, was now Russian territory. This river constituted the most vital trade artery in Eastern Europe, and Moscow now controlled it. This development facilitated trade with Persia via the Caspian Sea, opened routes to Central Asia, and, most crucially, paved the way to Siberia. Merely 3 decades after Kazan's fall, Russian fur trappers began to cross the Urals. By 1639, less than a century after Kazan, Russians had reached the Pacific Ocean, traversing the entire Asian continent in a time frame that saw other European nations exploring a single coastline. This explains why Russia today stands as the world's largest country by land area. It all commenced with the seizure of Kazan. Nevertheless, perhaps the most profound impact concerned identity. For 3 centuries, Russia had been governed by Mongol-Tatar Muslim powers. Moscow's grand princes were compelled to bow before the Khan, to pay tribute, and to seek permission. With Kazan's subjugation, that dynamic reversed. For the first time, Moscow was no longer subservient. For the first time, Russians emerged as conquerors. And for the first time, the Russian state evolved into a multi-ethnic, multi-religious empire. Kazan brought under Russian rule numerous peoples: Tatars, Chuvash, Mari, Udmurt, Bashkir. Some were Muslim, Others adhered to ancestral faiths. Now, all lived under Moscow's authority. Thus, some historians contend that October 2, 1552, marked the genesis of the diverse Russian Empire we recognize today. However, this period also harbored a grim reality. Kazan's Muslim inhabitants faced expulsion from the city, mosques were razed, and a forceful conversion drive commenced, albeit with limited success. For the Tartars, this conquest wasn't a glorious triumph of civilization over barbarism. It signified the demise of their sovereign state and the onset of centuries under alien domination. Even now, on October 15th or October 2nd by the old calendar, certain Tatars in Tatarstan observe a day of remembrance and sorrow, honoring those who perished defending Kazan. The Russian administration outlawed public gatherings on this day in 2021, yet the memory endures. As always, history proves intricate. One individual's victory often represents another's misfortune. Ivan returned to Moscow hailed as a hero, his joy compounded by news of his wife giving birth to a son. Although the infant's life was brief, Ivan's homecoming celebrated his triumph. To memorialize his success, Ivan commissioned the construction of one of Russia's most renowned edifices, St. Basil's Cathedral, located in Moscow's Red Square. Adorned with vibrant, distinctively shaped domes, the cathedral merged Russian architectural styles with Eastern motifs, embodying the new multicultural empire Russia had become. Yet the narrative of Ivan takes an unfortunate turn. In the years following Kazan's fall, Ivan's demeanor grew increasingly cruel and emotionally unstable. He instituted the Oprichnina, a clandestine police force that terrorized the nation. He executed countless individuals in fits of paranoid fury, and in a fit of rage in 1581, he fatally struck his own eldest son with a staff. This is why he earned the moniker, the Terrible, not merely for his authority, but for his brutality. But that narrative belongs to a different discussion. For now, let's concentrate on the lessons gleaned. After all we've covered, what insights can we draw? I believe there are three key takeaways. For centuries, military superiority rested with those possessing the swiftest cavalry and the most skilled archers, a principle upon which the Mongols forged history's vastest empire. But with the advent of new technologies, cannons, firearms, and advanced siege engineering, the entire paradigm shifted. What was once deemed insurmountable suddenly became vulnerable. This principle extends beyond warfare, applying to business, technology, and life itself. Yesterday's effective strategies may prove obsolete tomorrow. Survival hinges on the capacity to adapt, learn, and implement novel concepts. Ivan wasn't an exceptional general, but his willingness to learn from setbacks, embrace new technologies, and modify his methods led to his success where others failed. Legends often recount feats of valiant warriors and magnificent battles. In truth, however, most conflicts are determined by mundane elements such as logistics, supply networks, and meticulous preparation. Ivan's victory at Kazan wasn't solely due to a larger army. He prevailed because he established Sviyazhsk, a forward operating base that resolved critical supply issues. He won because he dedicated months to preparation, training his soldiers, amassing weaponry, and meticulously planning every detail. The same holds true in life. Success rarely stems from monumental moments, but from diligent preparation, relentless effort, and sustained perseverance. For Moscow, the fall of Kazan marked a beginning, the initial stride toward becoming a formidable power. For the Tatars, it represented an ending, the loss of independence and the commencement of centuries under foreign dominion. History is never a simplistic tale of good versus evil. It is intricate. Every significant event produces victors and vanquished, individuals celebrating and those mourning. It is crucial that when we study history, we remember not only to laud the conquerors, but also to recall those who suffered loss, the cultures that vanished, and the voices that were silenced. For true history isn't solely about kingdoms and empires, it's about people, individuals who lived, loved, aspired, and struggled through pivotal moments. On October 2, 1552, from a vantage point overlooking the Volga River, a city fell, bringing an end to the last vestiges of the Mongol Empire in Europe. Yet, from its ashes emerged an entirely distinct Russia, a multi-ethnic empire destined to stretch from Poland to the Pacific, from the Arctic to Central Asia. The narrative of Kazan serves as a powerful reminder that history is forged in defining moments. When leaders confront difficult choices, when technology transforms the competitive landscape, and when old empires yield to new ones. It also impresses upon us that such moments come at a price. For every triumph, there is a tragedy. For every beginning, an end. Now, what aspect of this story resonated most with you? Was it Ivan's engineering prowess, the bravery of Kazan's defenders, or the enduring repercussions that shaped our contemporary world? Share your thoughts below. If you found this video engaging, please hit the like button, subscribe, and activate the notification bell to receive more in-depth historical accounts. Because history isn't just about the past, it's about comprehending our origins and perhaps discerning our future trajectory. We appreciate you watching, and always remember that every significant empire originates from a single resolve, a pivotal decision, a period of bravery or dire need that fundamentally alters everything. Until next time.